People say trouble always announces itself with noise. In the Miller household, it arrived silently, slipping through routines, smiles, and the soft click of heels on the hardwood floor. Ethan Miller, 15, had no idea that the woman who walked into his home 2 years ago, holding a tidy leather purse and offering warm cookies, would one day become the center of every fear he never dared speak aloud. Victoria Hale looked perfect, too perfect. She had that polished calm, the kind that made people trust her instantly. Daniel, Ethan's father, trusted her most of all. At first, nothing seemed wrong. Victoria blended into the house with gentle suggestions, polite laughter, and the way she always kept everything spotless. So spotless that even Ethan's forgotten pencil on the counter seemed like an offense. She often held Daniel's hand and told him she just wanted the best for their family. The sunlight from the kitchen window would reflect off her slim silver watch, making her look almost saint-like. But small things started to go missing. Papers were misplaced, messages forgotten, conversations retold in ways Ethan didn't remember saying. Victoria always had an explanation, logical, calm, and delivered with that soothing voice that made Daniel nod along. Ethan couldn't prove anything. Not yet, but he felt it. Something cold, sharp, deliberate beneath Victoria's gentle surface. And then, one evening, as Daniel walked past the living room, he found a single folded paper sitting on the coffee table. A paper he had never seen before, addressed to him in unfamiliar handwriting. And the moment he opened it, everything he thought he knew about his wife and about his own home began to crack apart. Long before the mysterious letter appeared, Ethan Miller had already learned how to live quietly in his own home. Quiet enough not to disturb, quiet enough not to trigger Victoria's subtly sharpened tone. He wasn't always this way. Before Victoria, Ethan was warm, open, always joking with his father while helping him fix things around the house or sitting beside him while he reviewed blueprints for construction projects. But after Victoria moved in, the house changed, slowly, almost gracefully, like a curtain being drawn without anyone noticing. Ethan felt it before he understood it. Rooms that once felt safe suddenly carried invisible borders. His laughter became too loud, his footsteps too heavy, his presence too inconvenient. Victoria never raised her voice. She never argued. Instead, she used small comments, gentle, almost affectionate on the surface. Maybe Ethan should try harder in school. He's sensitive, sometimes overly so. Daniel, don't be too hard on him. He's struggling. The worst part? Daniel believed her. Not because he doubted Ethan, but because Victoria seemed so patient, so understanding, so earnest in her concern. Ethan tried explaining the strange things happening around him. His homework disappearing from his desk, his school schedule being changed without his knowledge, messages from teachers never reaching him, but Victoria always had a reason, always ready with a small sigh and a sympathetic look that made Ethan feel like a burden for asking. Over time, he began to question himself. Maybe he was forgetful. Maybe he was the problem. That doubt, quiet, poisonous, was exactly what Victoria wanted. Only Ava, his best friend, noticed the difference. She'd seen Ethan pull away, seen the exhaustion in his eyes even when he tried to smile. She once told him, "Something's off in your house, and it's not you." But Ethan didn't know how to explain something he couldn't prove. Still, deep down, he knew Victoria's kindness was a mask. He just didn't know what lay behind it. What he didn't realize was that the letter Daniel found wasn't the first clue. It was simply the first one Daniel couldn't ignore. And soon, another tiny incident would happen, one that would turn suspicion into fear. Because the next thing to go missing was something that could never disappear by accident. The Miller house had once been a warm, open place. Photos on the walls, shoes by the door, the faint smell of Daniel's coffee every morning. But ever since Victoria settled in, the house felt curated, staged, almost like one of those perfectly arranged model homes where everything looked beautiful but nothing felt lived in. Ethan noticed it in small changes at first. His mother's old blanket, soft, faded, and always draped over the couch, disappeared without a word. The photo of Ethan and his father fishing, once displayed proudly in the hallway, was suddenly moved to the upstairs closet. Even the kitchen felt different. Victoria rearranged every cabinet so Ethan constantly reached into the wrong drawers. Whenever he asked where things went, Victoria smiled as if he were being silly. "You must be misremembering, sweetheart. It was always like this." But it wasn't. Ethan knew it. And the more Victoria insisted otherwise, the more the walls of his own home felt like they were pushing him into a corner. Daniel, meanwhile, was oblivious. He worked long hours, often bringing home blueprints or contracts he reviewed on his laptop long into the night. And every time Ethan tried to talk to him, Victoria appeared, soft voice, calming touch, always redirecting the conversation. "Daniel, he's had a long day. Let him rest," she'd say, guiding Ethan away before he could speak. One afternoon, Ethan came home to find his entire bedroom rearranged. Desk moved, drawers emptied, shelves reorganized. Victoria stood in the doorway, hands folded neatly. "I thought you could use a fresh start," she said. But Ethan felt exposed, violated. Someone had touched everything he owned. That night, he called Ava, his voice trembling even though he tried to hide it. She listened quietly, then said, "Ethan, someone doesn't do all that unless they're trying to make you feel smaller." He knew she was right, and the more he thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't about organization. Victoria was shaping the house to fit her world, one where Ethan didn't belong. But everything came crashing down the day something disappeared that no one could explain away. His late mother's pendant, the one thing Ethan guarded more closely than anything else. And when Victoria insisted she had never seen it, Ethan realized the truth. He wasn't just being pushed aside, he was being erased. Losing his mother's pendant was the moment something inside Ethan shifted. Until then, he could still convince himself that Victoria was just strict, just particular, just misunderstood. But the pendant, his last physical memory of his mom, was kept in a small wooden box under his bed. No one touched it. No one even knew it existed except him and his father. When Ethan told Daniel it was gone, Daniel frowned but didn't jump to conclusions. "Maybe you misplaced it," he said gently. But Ethan shook his head. "Dad, I never move it, never." Victoria's reaction, however, was too smooth, too polished. She placed a hand over her heart and said, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. That must feel awful, but we'll find it. Things turn up." Things didn't turn up. Not this. Ethan knew she was lying. The days that followed felt heavier. Victoria's presence grew more suffocating, her eyes lingering on Ethan a little too long, as if studying him the way someone studies a problem they've almost solved. She timed her words carefully, small comments whispered to Daniel when Ethan walked out of a room. "He's been forgetful lately. He seems stressed. Maybe he needs discipline. I'm worried about his behavior." And Daniel, buried under work and exhausted, didn't recognize the manipulation tightening around him like a quiet trap. Ava, noticing Ethan withdraw further at school, confronted him. "What happened now?" When Ethan told her about the pendant, she didn't hesitate. "That wasn't an accident. Someone wanted to hurt you." It was the first time someone said it out loud, what Ethan had been scared to admit to himself. Meanwhile, Victoria escalated. She began controlling who could enter the house, changing the passcode on the front door, and insisting the family use a shared calendar she managed. She even accidentally deleted a message from Ethan's teacher about a scholarship meeting, making Ethan appear irresponsible. Each move was subtle. Each move had a cover story, but together they painted a picture too deliberate to ignore. Then, one evening, Ethan overheard a conversation he was never meant to hear. Victoria on the phone, her voice low, sharp, nothing like her usual softness. "He's becoming a problem," she whispered. "If this keeps up, we'll have to move sooner than planned." And the moment Ethan heard the other voice respond, a man's voice he didn't recognize, everything inside him froze. The phone call haunted Ethan for days. Every time he replayed Victoria's cold whisper in his mind, the more certain he became that whatever she was planning went far beyond manipulation. But it wasn't until the night of Daniel's company dinner, an event held at a quiet upscale restaurant overlooking the river, that everything exploded into the open. Daniel had insisted Ethan come. "It'll be good for us," he said, "a family night." Ethan agreed only because he missed his dad. He wanted, just once, to feel like things weren't falling apart. But Victoria was unusually cheerful that evening, her smile bright, her arm looped through Daniel's as if nothing in the world could crack their perfect image. It made Ethan uneasy. Inside the restaurant, candles flickered on polished tables and soft jazz played in the background. Daniel introduced Ethan to his co-workers, proud, warm, just like he used to be. For a moment, Ethan felt seen again. Then Victoria stepped forward. "Oh, Daniel," she said with a gentle laugh, "should we tell them what happened at home earlier?" Ethan froze. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Victoria sighed, soft, patient, heartbreakingly disappointed. "Well, I didn't want to embarrass him, but Ethan accidentally knocked over your briefcase. Important documents spilled everywhere and one of the contracts got torn. I handled it, of course, but he really needs to be more careful." Gasps around the table, eyes turned to Ethan. It was a lie, a complete fabrication. Ethan's throat closed. "I didn't touch anything," he said quietly. Victoria tilted her head. "Honey, we talked about telling the truth." Daniel looked torn, caught between frustration and confusion. Ethan felt the humiliation burn through him, hot and suffocating. A coworker whispered, "Kids act out sometimes, especially at that age." Victoria placed a comforting hand on Daniel's arm, as if she were the wounded one. "We'll work through it. Families always do." Ethan felt something inside him snap, not anger, but a deep, aching sense of betrayal. He looked at Daniel, hoping his father would see through the act, defend him, say something, but Daniel stayed silent. A silence that told Ethan he was starting to lose his father to Victoria's narrative. He excused himself quietly, stepping outside into the cold night air, chest tight, trying not to break down. And that's when he saw it. Through the restaurant window, Victoria stepping away from the table, pulling out her phone, smirking as she dialed someone. When Ethan realized whose voice he heard on the other end of that call, the truth hit him like a punch. The man from the previous phone conversation wasn't a stranger. He was someone connected far more deeply than he imagined. Ethan stood outside the restaurant, his breath fogging in the cold night air, replaying the voice he heard through Victoria's phone. It was the same man from the whispered conversation he'd overheard at home. The same deep tone, steady and confident. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't misunderstanding. Someone was working with Victoria. Before he could think further, the restaurant door opened and Ava appeared, having slipped away from her own family dinner nearby when Ethan texted her earlier. She took one look at his face and knew something had happened. "What did she do now?" she asked softly. Ethan told her everything. Victoria's lie, Daniel's silence, the phone call, the familiar male voice. Ava listened, her expression shifting from concern to something sharper, more determined. "Ethan, this isn't just manipulation anymore. She's setting a narrative, one where you're the problem, one where she looks like the savior." Ethan swallowed hard. "Why? What does she want?" Ava hesitated, then said the words he'd been afraid to consider. "Maybe she wants your dad alone, completely alone." The idea made Ethan's stomach twist, but deep down he knew she was right. Ava placed a hand on his shoulder. "You can't keep letting her control the story. You need proof, something undeniable, something your dad can't ignore." For the first time in months, something flickered inside Ethan, not anger, but resolve, a quiet, steady flame. "I heard her," Ethan whispered. "I heard her planning something with that man. I don't know who he is yet, but they're hiding something." Ava nodded. "Then we find out who he is." They returned to the back entrance of the restaurant, careful to stay out of view from the windows. Through a narrow crack in the curtains, Ethan watched Victoria, smiling flawlessly as she returned to the table, her hand resting on Daniel's shoulder, possessive, calculated. Ava leaned close. "She's confident, too confident. That means she slipped somewhere. People like her always do." Ethan felt his heart steady. For the first time, he wasn't just surviving the chaos. He was ready to fight back. But the moment they turned to leave, Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket. A text. Unknown number. One sentence. "Stop digging, Ethan. You don't know what she's capable of." He froze. Ava looked at the screen, then at him. Because whoever sent that message wasn't warning him. They were watching him. Ethan stared at the message on his phone, the cold glow of the screen tightening his chest. Stop digging. Someone knew. Someone was watching. Someone wanted him scared. Ava grabbed his arm. Ethan, this means we're close. Nobody threatens you unless they're afraid you'll find something real. But Ethan wasn't brave. At least he never thought he was. His hands trembled, and for a second he felt like the frightened kid Victoria wanted him to be. Then he remembered the pendant, the humiliation, his father's silence. No more shrinking. Not tonight. Okay, he whispered. We find proof. The next afternoon, while Daniel worked late, Ethan made a decision he'd been avoiding. He would search Victoria's study. She kept that room locked most of the time, calling it her private workspace, though her job didn't require anything close to secrecy. But Ethan had watched her long enough to know she hid things there. Ava stood lookout by the hallway as he slipped inside. The room smelled like expensive candles and cold perfume. Everything was lined up perfectly. Papers stacked, pens aligned, drawers neat to the point of obsession. Ethan moved carefully, checking folders, notebooks, anything that looked out of place. Nothing. Until Ava whispered sharply, "She's home earlier than usual." Panic shot through him. Ethan scanned the room again, desperate, heart pounding, then something caught his eye. A slim black folder wedged behind a set of decorative books on the shelf. Hidden, but not well enough. Inside were printed emails, dozens of them. Ethan's breath stopped. They were conversations between Victoria and the unknown man, the same voice from the phone calls, financial plans, meeting locations, a list of Daniel's assets, notes about timelines and removing obstacles, and then the line that made Ethan feel physically sick. Once the boy is out of the picture, everything moves faster. Ava covered her mouth. Ethan, she's not just manipulating. She's planning something dangerous. Footsteps echoed down the hall. Ethan shoved the folder under his jacket, heart racing, hands clammy. The doorknob turned. Victoria's voice came through, sweet as honey. "Ethan, are you in my study?" And before he could hide, escape, or breathe, the door began to open. The doorknob turned slowly, the metallic click echoing through the perfectly arranged study like a gunshot. Ethan's pulse hammered in his ears. Ava pressed herself against the hallway wall, trying to disappear into the shadows. Victoria stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room with that gentle gaze she used like a weapon. "Oh," she said softly, surprised but smiling. "There you are, sweetheart." Ethan froze, the hidden folder pressed tightly against his ribs under his jacket. He forced his breathing to steady, praying she wouldn't notice the tremble in his hands. I was just looking for a pen," he muttered. Victoria's smile widened just slightly. Too slightly. "You know you can always ask me for what you need." She walked toward him, her heels clicking rhythmically on the hardwood floor. Each step felt like a countdown. Ethan kept his arms stiff at his sides so the folder wouldn't shift. He hoped she couldn't hear his heartbeat. "And next time," she continued, brushing her fingers across the desk, "knock before coming into my private space. Boundaries are important for a healthy family." Family. The word twisted like something sharp in Ethan's stomach. Victoria paused, tilting her head as if studying him. Ethan held his breath. Then, thank God, she turned away, heading toward the window to adjust the blinds. He seized the moment. Ava's waiting for me," Ethan said quickly. "We're working on a school project. I should go." Victoria didn't turn around. "Of course," she murmured. "Run along." Ethan slipped out of the room, grabbing Ava's wrist as they hurried down the stairs, not daring to breathe until they reached the front yard. Ava exhaled shakily. That was too close. They walked fast toward the sidewalk, putting distance between themselves and the house. When they reached the corner, Ethan finally pulled out the folder. Ava stared at the papers again, flipping through the emails, her fear replaced by rising urgency. "Ethan, look at this." She pointed to a document they hadn't noticed earlier, an unsigned legal draft titled Household Transfer Agreement. It outlined a plan for Daniel to voluntarily hand over all property and financial control to Victoria within the next 60 days. But the part that chilled Ethan completely was the final annotation scribbled in the margin, contingent on full removal of the boy. A car engine rumbled from behind them. Headlights flashed across the sidewalk. Slowly, deliberately, a black sedan rolled to a stop, windows tinted, engine idling. Ava whispered, "Ethan, someone's watching us." And when the window lowered just an inch, just enough to reveal a familiar male voice telling him to get in, Ethan realized the danger was no longer hidden in emails or whispers. It had arrived on the street, staring straight at him. The black sedan idled at the curb, its low hum vibrating through the quiet neighborhood. Ethan felt Ava tense beside him. The window slid down another inch, just enough for the driver's voice to seep into the cold evening air. Calm, smooth, unmistakable. "Ethan, we need to talk." It was the same voice he heard over the phone, the same man Victoria whispered to, the same man planning things behind his father's back. Ava grabbed Ethan's sleeve. "Don't go near that car." But the man spoke again, firmer this time. "You're in over your head. If you keep pushing, you're going to get hurt. Get in, now." Ethan took a step back. His instincts screamed. Everything about the man, from the steady tone to the tinted glass hiding his face, radiated danger. Yet there was a strange confidence, too, as if he believed Ethan had no choice but to obey. "We're leaving," Ethan said, forcing strength into his voice. But when he turned to walk away, the sedan crept forward, blocking their path. The driver didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You think you understand what's happening? You have no idea what Victoria is prepared to do." The name hit Ethan like a punch. Hearing it spoken so casually, so knowingly, confirmed how deep this connection ran. Ava stepped in front of Ethan, her chin lifted. "Back off, we're calling the police." The man laughed quietly. "Go ahead, tell them what? That your stepmother keeps her house clean? That she expects rules? No one will believe a kid over a woman like her." He wasn't threatening with force. He was threatening with credibility, with control, with the one weapon Victoria wielded better than anything: perception. Ethan clenched his fists. "My dad will believe me." A pause, a slow exhale. "Oh, Daniel," the man replied. "He's already halfway convinced you're unstable. Victoria's been working on that for months." Ava's eyes widened. Ethan felt a sting behind his ribs, fear mixed with humiliation. Was that true? How far had she gone in shaping his father's view of him? Before either of them could respond, the man added quietly, "If you want him to stay safe, stop digging." Then the sedan sped off, disappearing around the corner as quickly as it had arrived, leaving only exhaust and dread in its wake. Ava grabbed Ethan's hand. "We have to tell your dad, now." But as they started toward home, Ethan's phone buzzed again. A new message. No name, just 4 words. Too late for that. And when Ethan looked up at the house, he saw something through the front window, something that made his stomach drop and his legs go cold. Ethan froze on the sidewalk, staring at the glowing window of his house. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. The living room lights were on, but not in that warm, inviting way Daniel usually left them. They flickered faintly, casting long, distorted shadows across the walls. And in the center of the room stood Daniel, rigid, motionless, like someone holding their breath. Ava whispered, "Ethan, what's happening?" They moved closer, silent as the wind brushing through the cold night. When they reached the porch, Ethan could finally see it. Daniel holding a stack of papers. Papers Ethan recognized instantly. The emails, the financial plans, the notes about removing him. Ethan's heart stopped. The folder he thought he had hidden was now in his father's hands. "Oh, God," Ethan whispered. "She found it. She must have found it." Ava swallowed. But how did she know? Before she could finish, Victoria stepped into view. She stood beside Daniel with perfect posture, her expression calm, composed, almost tender, if not for the glint of triumph in her eyes. She rested a gentle hand on Daniel's arm, as if comforting a grieving man. Daniel looked devastated. Victoria had struck first. Ethan burst through the door. "Dad, that's not what you think. Victoria gasped softly, one hand flying to her chest. "Ethan, please stop lying." Her voice trembled just enough to sound believable. Daniel exhaled shakily. "Son, why would you go through her personal things? Why would you make up something like this?" "I didn't make it up," Ethan's voice cracked. "She's been planning." Victoria stepped closer, shaking her head with heartbreaking disappointment. "I know you're struggling, and I know you blame me, but this... creating documents, printing fake emails, trying to turn your father against me," Ava snapped. "They're real. We saw..." Victoria cut her off smoothly. "Sweetheart, I'm sure you think you did, but Ethan needs help. Professional help." The words hit Ethan like a slap. Daniel rubbed his forehead, unable to meet his eyes. "Ethan, I found these in your backpack." Ethan's stomach dropped. "She planted them. Dad, she planted them." Victoria whispered, "He's not well, Daniel." Silence thickened the room. Then Daniel said, barely audible, "Ethan, I think you should stay with your aunt for a while, just until things calm down." Ethan felt the world collapse beneath him. Ava grabbed his arm, but he barely felt it. Victoria smiled, small, victorious, hidden beneath a mask of concern. And then Ethan noticed something in her other hand. A set of keys, Daniel's keys, house keys, car keys, office keys. And in that instant, Ethan realized Victoria wasn't trying to remove him from the house. She was taking control of everything inside it. 2 days after Daniel told Ethan he should stay with his aunt, the tension in the house had become unbearable. They barely spoke. Victoria walked around with a serene smile as if peace had returned. But Ethan felt the opposite. Every corner of the house pulsed with something dangerous, something waiting to snap. Then came the invitation. Daniel's company was hosting a charity gala at a downtown hotel, a polished event with donors, executives, and board members. Normally, Ethan avoided these gatherings, but Daniel insisted he come. "It'll show people we're still a family," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Ethan agreed for one reason only. He needed to watch Victoria. She had the spotlight now, but people often slipped when too confident. When they arrived, the ballroom glowed with chandeliers and soft music. Formal dresses shimmered under golden lights. Ethan stayed close to Ava, who had been invited by another family. She looked around with wary eyes. "Places like this," she whispered, "make people act clean even when they're not." Victoria floated across the room in a silver dress, her smile perfectly rehearsed. She introduced herself to everyone, her hand gently resting on Daniel's arm as if she were the pillar of stability. People loved her. Of course they did. She was polished, articulate, sympathetic in all the ways that impressed adults. Then the shift began. A senior board member approached Daniel with a concerned look. "Is everything all right at home? Victoria mentioned the trouble with your son. I'm sorry you're dealing with that." Ethan's blood turned cold. She'd already begun poisoning the narrative publicly. Another donor chimed in. "Teenagers act out. I hear he's caused some real issues." Ethan felt eyes turning toward him, soft pity mixed with judgment. Victoria placed a gentle hand on her chest. "I don't want anyone misunderstanding him. He's a good boy. He's just overwhelmed." Every word was a dagger wrapped in silk. Ava leaned toward Ethan. "She's rewriting the story, in front of witnesses." Ethan's breath shook. "I know." But then something unexpected happened. A waiter approached Ethan, unsure, holding a small envelope. "This was left for you at the front desk." Ethan frowned. "For me?" The waiter nodded, said it was urgent. Ethan opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Printed emails, the same ones he had shown no one except Ava. But these had something new. Metadata showing timestamps, IP addresses, and sender verification. Proof. Indisputable proof. Ava gasped. "Ethan, who sent this?" Before he could answer, a shadow fell across the table. Victoria stood there, eyes locked on the envelope, her smile frozen. And for the first time, Ethan saw something crack behind her perfectly controlled expression. A flicker of fear. Victoria's smile didn't falter at first. It stayed frozen, polite, polished, but her eyes betrayed her. They flicked from Ethan to the envelope, then back again, calculating, adjusting, scrambling. Ethan had never seen her lose control, not even for a second. But now? He saw the smallest fracture. "Where did you get that?" she asked quietly, voice steady but too sharp around the edges. Ethan didn't answer. Ava stepped closer to him as if shielding him. She whispered, "Keep your voice calm. Don't let her twist this." The noise of the gala swirled around them. Glasses clinking, people laughing, music drifting through the room, completely unaware that the perfect wife everyone admired was standing in the middle of a tightening noose. Victoria leaned forward slightly. "Ethan, honey, I think you're confused. You've been under a lot of stress. Let me see what you have." Ethan held the envelopes closer to his chest. "You already know what's in here." Daniel approached then, noticing the tension. "What's going on?" Victoria turned instantly, slipping into her familiar role. "Danny, he's having another episode. He believes I sent him something." "I didn't say you sent it," Ethan cut in, "but you definitely wrote it. Her jaw tightened, a tiny tick, almost invisible. Almost. Daniel frowned. "Victoria, what is he talking about?" She opened her mouth, but a sudden voice from behind them interrupted. "Is everything okay here?" It was Daniel's boss. More people turned. A small circle of attention began forming. Victoria hated attention she couldn't control. Ethan could feel her panic sharpening beneath her calm exterior. She tried to smile. "Just a family misunderstanding." Ethan finally unfolded the paper. "These emails prove everything. You've been planning to take Dad's assets and to get rid of me." Gasps, whispers. Someone dropped a fork against a plate. Daniel's face drained of color. "Victoria, what is this?" Victoria reached for the paper, her voice rising just slightly. Not enough to seem unhinged, but enough to show cracks. "These are fake. Ethan created them. He needs help." Ava stepped in front of Ethan. "We both saw the originals. This isn't fake." The room went still. Victoria realized she was losing the room, fast. So she played her final desperate card. She let out a trembling breath, eyes watering instantly. "Daniel, he's dangerous. I'm afraid of him. You should be too." A collective gasp spread through the crowd. Daniel turned to Ethan, confused, shaken, torn. And then a new voice cut through the noise, a firm, unfamiliar voice from the entrance of the ballroom. "Actually, he's the one telling the truth." Ethan spun toward the voice, and what he saw made Victoria go completely pale. The ballroom fell silent as every head turned toward the doorway. A man in his early 40s stepped inside. Tall, composed, dressed in a charcoal suit that didn't draw attention yet somehow commanded the room. Ethan didn't recognize him, but Victoria did. Her face drained of color. "Jackson," she whispered, barely audible. So this was him. The voice behind the phone calls, the man in the sedan, the shadow hiding behind Victoria's schemes. Daniel blinked. "Do you two know each other?" Victoria straightened, trying to recover her calm. "He's just a financial advisor I consulted once." But Jackson cut in sharply. "Stop lying, this has gone far enough." Gasps fluttered across the room like ripples in water. Victoria's mask cracked wider. "Jackson, what are you doing? You promised—" "I promised nothing," he said, stepping closer. "I told you this was spiraling. I told you not to involve the boy." Ethan's chest tightened. "Why are you here?" Jackson looked at him with something Ethan didn't expect. Regret. To fix what she started. Victoria's voice sharpened like a blade. "You think they'll believe you? After everything you've done?" A murmur spread. People were watching her, not him. She knew she was losing control. Jackson addressed Daniel directly. "She didn't tell you the truth. We were working together, yes, on something unethical, something I wish I'd never agreed to. But when it came to framing your son, that was all her." Victoria snapped. "You liar!" He raised a hand. "I have the originals of every email she forged in your son's name, every plan, every transfer request she drafted." The room erupted in whispers. Cameras from guests began to quietly lift. Victoria's panic finally surfaced, raw, unfiltered. "You don't understand. Daniel was supposed to trust me. Ethan was ruining everything." Daniel stepped back from her as if she had become a stranger. "Victoria," he said slowly, "did you really try to make me think my own son was unstable?" Her breath hitched. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Jackson continued, voice low. "She wanted full control of your accounts, your assets, and once she isolated you from Ethan, the rest would have been easy." A tremor went through Daniel. Ethan felt his father's world shattering. Victoria suddenly lunged forward, reaching for Daniel's arm, desperation spilling through her elegant facade. "Danny, listen to me. He's lying. They're both lying. I did it all for us, for our future." Daniel pulled away. Security began drifting closer, sensing trouble. Then Jackson added with a calmness that froze everyone. "There's one more thing you should know. Something she hid even from me." Victoria's eyes widened in horror. "Tell them, Victoria. Tell them what you did the night his mother died." The moment Jackson spoke those words, the entire ballroom froze. Even the music faded, as if the orchestra itself had been stunned into silence. Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. His mother, the night she died, a night no one ever talked about, because the tragedy was supposed to be an accident, something nature took, not something someone caused. Victoria staggered back a step, her hands trembling. For the first time, she didn't look polished or composed. She looked cornered. Daniel's voice cracked. "What does my late wife have to do with any of this?" Jackson exhaled slowly, eyes fixed on Victoria. "I didn't want to believe it either, but she told me before all of this escalated. She said she knew you were vulnerable after losing your wife, that she entered your life at the perfect time because the house was emotionally weakened." Ethan's stomach twisted. "What are you saying?" Jackson hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "She admitted she was there the night your mother collapsed. Not inside the house, but close. Too close for coincidence." A gasp rippled across the room. Daniel's voice shook. "Victoria, tell me he's lying." But Victoria said nothing. Her lips parted, but no explanation came out. Only silence. Ethan's heartbeat pounded loud in his ears. His mother's passing had always been explained as a sudden medical event, unpredictable, unavoidable. But now the details he never questioned, the timing, the way Victoria showed up in their lives weeks later, felt different, sharper, wrong. Victoria finally found her voice. "I didn't do anything to her. I didn't touch her. I was only passing by." "Passing by?" Daniel echoed, disbelief overtaking grief. "At night? On our street? When no one knew you?" She reached out to Daniel shortly after, Jackson added quietly. Very shortly, before anyone else even understood what happened. Victoria snapped. "I was trying to help. I saw how devastated he was. I wanted to support him." "By inserting yourself into our lives?" Ethan's voice cracked, releasing years of buried grief. "By taking Mom's place before Dad even had the chance to breathe." Victoria's face twisted, not with guilt, but with something darker, fear of losing control. People were watching closely now. Phones recording, eyes narrowing, sympathy draining with every second she failed to defend herself. Daniel's hands trembled. "Were you following us? Were you watching my family before she died?" Victoria's silence was louder than any confession. Jackson stepped closer. "Victoria, tell them the truth. The boy deserves that much." Victoria's breathing turned uneven. Her composure crumbled as her eyes darted toward the exits, calculating, panicking. "Stop," she whispered. "Just stop." But the room had already shifted. No one looked at her with admiration anymore, only suspicion. And then, in one sudden, desperate motion, she grabbed Daniel's arm, not gently, but with a force that startled everyone. "Danny, you don't understand. If you walk away from me now, everything is ruined. You can't leave me, not after what I've done for us." Daniel recoiled, pulling his arm free. And in that split second, something slipped from Victoria's purse, a small, folded document that fluttered to the floor. A legal form, signed, stamped. A power of attorney transfer, giving her full control over Daniel's assets, effective immediately. The legal document lay on the ballroom floor like a dropped weapon. Silent, incriminating, impossible to ignore. For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. Daniel stared at the paper, then at Victoria, his expression empty in a way that frightened even Ethan. "Victoria," he said softly, "what is this?" She lunged toward the document, but an employee stepped in, picking it up before she could reach it. He handed it to Daniel with a respectful nod. Daniel unfolded it slowly, his hands shaking. The room watched as his eyes scanned the lines, the signatures, the dates, the clause handing over every account, property, and business asset to Victoria. His face went from confusion to disbelief, to something deeper, a silent, rising heartbreak. "You forged my signature," Daniel whispered, the words cracking in the air. Victoria shook her head rapidly. "I didn't. You signed it when you were tired. You don't remember." "That's not my handwriting," Daniel snapped, a rare flash of anger breaking through years of calm. Victoria reached for him again, desperate. "Danny, please listen. Everything I did for us, for our future. You were overwhelmed, stressed. The company was struggling." "My company is fine," he said, stepping back. "But my family, you destroyed that." Ethan watched the exchange with a tight chest. For so long, he'd prayed his father would see the truth. And now that it was happening, it felt unbearable, like watching someone wake from a dream into a nightmare. Jackson cleared his throat, offering a second document. "There's more. She intended to move funds overseas. She pressured me to begin the transfers next month." Victoria spun on him. "You traitor! You wouldn't have anything if not for me." Her voice finally lost its sweetness. The room flinched. Daniel's breathing grew unsteady. "Victoria, how long have you been planning this?" She didn't answer. "Since my wife died," he whispered. Her eyes flickered, one moment too long. That silence broke something in Daniel. He turned to Ethan, voice trembling. "Son, I'm so sorry. I should have listened. I should have protected you." For the first time in months, Ethan saw his real father, hurt, shaken, but awake. Victoria, sensing control slipping away completely, straightened her posture and scanned the room with cold calculation. She was done pretending. Her next move wouldn't be gentle. She slowly reached into her purse again. A hush fell instantly. Ethan grabbed Daniel's sleeve. Ava stepped closer, eyes wide. Victoria pulled out something small, shiny, metallic, and held it tightly in her fist. And the moment she lifted her eyes, everyone understood. She wasn't done fighting, not even close. Victoria lifted the small metallic item slowly, letting the room see it glint beneath the chandelier lights. People stiffened, but it wasn't a weapon. Nothing dangerous, nothing that could physically harm anyone. It was a digital voice recorder, sleek and silver, the kind used for meetings or private notes. Yet the sight of it made Jackson curse under his breath. Daniel frowned. What is that?" Victoria held it delicately, almost triumphantly. "Insurance," she said, "for moments like this." Ethan felt chills crawl across his skin. "What's on it?" She smiled, a cold, knowing smile. "Everything I've ever needed to protect myself. Conversations, phone calls, agreements." Her eyes narrowed at Jackson, including his. Jackson inhaled sharply. "You recorded me without consent?" "You recorded yourself," she snapped. "I just pressed a button." People murmured. The idea that she'd been recording conversations wasn't illegal in itself, but morally, it painted a disturbing picture. She had been documenting, collecting, storing moments like pieces on a chessboard. Daniel stepped forward cautiously. "Victoria, what exactly do you think this proves?" "That I'm not the villain," she said, voice trembling with intensity. "That Ethan and Jackson twisted everything. That I only did what I had to do." Slowly, she tapped the recorder. A soft beep sounded, followed by her voice, steady and sweet. But then another voice joined, Jackson's, talking about transfer plans, timelines, money. Gasps rippled across the ballroom. But what shocked the room wasn't them. It was the third voice that came through. Victoria's, cold, sharp, unfiltered. "Daniel will believe anything I tell him. Once the boy is out of the picture, he won't fight me on signing over the rest." Daniel staggered back as if struck. "Victoria, is that your voice?" Her face went pale, not from guilt, but from the horrifying realization that she had never deleted the incriminating files she recorded herself. I didn't mean, that was taken out of context." "There is no context," Ethan said quietly. "That's who you really are." For the first time, tears appeared in Victoria's eyes. Not manipulation, not strategy. Real fear. The room wasn't under her spell anymore. Every angle she had crafted was crumbling at her feet. Ava whispered, "She's losing everything." Victoria's breathing quickened. She looked around wildly, as if searching for a way out, a new lie, a missing piece that could still save her. Then her gaze locked on Ethan. "None of this would be happening if you had just stayed in your place," she whispered, voice shaking. A hush fell. Daniel stepped protectively in front of his son. "Victoria," he said firmly, "this ends now." But Victoria wasn't looking at Daniel anymore. Her eyes had moved to something behind him. Someone. And a shadow stepped forward from the edge of the crowd. The last person Ethan expected to see at that gala. And the one person who could bury Victoria completely. From the edge of the ballroom, crowd stepped a woman. Mid-50s, composed, carrying a slim leather portfolio against her chest. Her presence was quiet, but it shifted the air instantly. Even Victoria froze at the sight of her. Daniel stared, confused. "Marianne?" Ethan blinked. He recognized her. Marianne Collins, the family attorney who handled his mother's estate years ago. She hadn't been involved with the Millers for nearly a decade. Victoria's reaction said everything. Her lips parted, her shoulders tensed. Fear stormed across her face faster than she could hide it. Why are you here?" she demanded. Marianne approached slowly, her eyes steady, calm in a way that made the entire room lean in. "I was contacted anonymously," Marianne said. "Someone sent me documents, files, and a letter urging me to come tonight." Daniel frowned. A letter? Marianne nodded. It arrived early this morning, left on my doorstep with no sender name. She opened her portfolio and pulled out a single folded sheet. The same paper Daniel found on the coffee table days earlier. The one that first showed him a glimpse of the truth he refused to see. It wasn't just a printout. It was a signed statement. Victoria visibly trembled. Marianne continued, voice firm but controlled. This document contains a confession, not a full one, but enough to expose the intent behind every lie, every manipulation, every move she made. Confession? Daniel echoed, stunned. Marianne handed him the paper. Read it. Daniel unfolded it slowly. The ballroom held its breath. Ethan watched his father's expressions shift. Shock, disbelief, devastation. Victoria tried to speak, but Marianne raised a hand. Not yet. Daniel finally whispered the words on the page. It says, "She targeted me after my wife died. She observed our family for months before introducing herself. She planned the relationship." The crowd murmured. Victoria lunged forward. "It's forged! I never wrote that!" But Marianne didn't flinch. The handwriting matches your notes from prior legal consultations, and the metadata of the original file confirms your laptop as the device used. Ethan's heart pounded. "Who sent you the letter?" Marianne looked at him carefully, almost sympathetically. "I don't know. There was no name. Only a message. Bring the truth before it's buried." Ava whispered beside him. Someone inside her circle must have turned on her. Jackson stiffened, but didn't speak. Victoria's voice rose, desperation cracking through every syllable. "This is a setup. I am being framed. Daniel, you know me." Daniel stepped back. "I don't know who you are." Victoria's breath hitched. Anger, fear, betrayal, every emotion twisted across her face. Security took one step closer. Then, suddenly, Victoria's gaze sharpened. Her eyes darted not to Daniel, not to Marianne, but to Ethan. And she whispered, as if realizing something too late. "No, it was you." Before anyone could understand what she meant, Victoria broke into a run, straight toward Ethan. Victoria surged forward, but not with violence. Her movement was fueled by pure desperation, a frantic attempt to seize control before the truth swallowed her whole. Security instinctively stepped in, creating a barrier. The crowd gasped, but no one screamed. The danger wasn't physical. It was the kind of danger born from a collapsing lie, from someone watching their world slip irreversibly out of their hands. "Ethan," she cried, breath shaking. "You did this! You set me up!" Ethan recoiled, not from fear of harm, but from the weight of her accusation. "I didn't have to set you up," he said softly. "You did that to yourself." Her face contorted. "You think you understand anything? You're just a child. Everything I built, everything I planned was supposed to save this family." Daniel stepped between them, his voice low but steady. "Saving a family doesn't start with destroying it." Victoria's eyes widened. Hearing Daniel reject her cut deeper than anything else. "Danny, you're choosing him over me after everything I've done for you?" "Everything you've done?" Daniel echoed. "What you've done is try to erase my son." Victoria flinched as if the words struck her physically. Marianne held up the statement again. "Victoria, the more you deny what's already proven, the worse this becomes for you. Stop before you dig deeper." But Victoria shook her head, near frantic. "You think this paper means anything? You think they'll believe a scribble over my word? I've held this family together. I've helped Daniel rebuild his life." Jackson spoke quietly from the side. "You manipulated him. There's a difference." Victoria turned on him with venom. "You don't get to judge me. You were part of it." "Until I realized what you were capable of," he replied, regret heavy in his voice. The room buzzed with whispers. Phones recorded every second. Ava stepped closer to Ethan, voice steady. "You're not alone. Everyone sees the truth now." Victoria's breath quickened. Her gaze darted wildly, searching for an escape, not from the building, but from accountability, from the life she had manufactured so carefully. Daniel took a slow breath. "Victoria, I'm asking you to stop. Right now. Before this becomes worse for you. You need to leave with security and speak to legal counsel." "No," her voice cracked. "No, I can fix this. I can still fix—" "You can't fix what was never real," Daniel said softly. The words hit harder than any accusation. Victoria staggered back, tears spilling down her cheeks, messy, uncontrolled, uncalculated. The mask was gone. Her eyes locked on Ethan again, but something had changed. She no longer looked triumphant or powerful. She looked defeated. Then she whispered something no one expected. "You weren't supposed to find out, not you." Ethan's brow furrowed. "Find out what?" Victoria's lips trembled. She looked at Daniel, then Marianne, then Jackson, as if deciding whom she feared most. Finally, she looked at Ethan. "The letter wasn't from an outsider," she said. "It came from someone inside your family." The ballroom felt suddenly colder, as if every chandelier had dimmed at once. Ethan stood frozen, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. Someone inside his family? Someone who knew enough and cared enough to expose Victoria? Daniel stepped closer to Victoria, shock tightening his voice. "What are you talking about? Who inside my family would send something like that?" Victoria let out a trembling, humorless laugh. "You think everyone in your perfect little circle adored you, that no one saw how blind you were? How easy you were to manipulate?" "Victoria," Marianne warned, "choose your next words carefully." But Victoria wasn't listening anymore. Something inside her had cracked fully open, spilling truth she no longer had the strength to bury. She lifted a shaking hand and pointed. Not at Daniel, not at Ethan, not at Ava or Jackson. She pointed toward the ballroom entrance. Ethan turned. Standing there, hesitant, pale, wringing her hands, was Daniel's younger sister, Laura. Daniel's voice broke. "Laura, what are you doing here?" Laura stepped forward slowly, eyes glistening with guilt. "I never meant for it to explode like this. I just wanted you to see her for who she really was." Ethan's breath caught. "You sent the letter?" Laura nodded. "I knew something was wrong from the beginning. I tried warning you, Daniel, but Victoria was always one step ahead, blocking my calls, deleting messages from my number, twisting every word I said." She glanced at Victoria with quiet disgust. "I found things in your office months ago. Documents you never signed. Emails you never read. I knew she was isolating you." Victoria scoffed. "Please, you always hated me." Laura shook her head. "I hated what you were doing to them." Daniel struggled to process everything. "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" "I tried," Laura whispered. "But every time I got close, she poisoned the well. You stopped trusting me, the same way she made you stop trusting your own son." Ethan felt Daniel's guilt like a physical force sweeping through the room. Victoria's voice sharpened. "So you went behind my back? You dug through my things? You committed fraud?" "I protected my family," Laura cut in. "Something you never intended to do." The ballroom erupted in murmurs. Cameras rose again. Victoria's control was slipping, faster now, spiraling. She turned back to Daniel, tears streaking her mascara. "Danny, don't let them turn you against me. You know what we had. You know I was there when no one else was. You needed me." Daniel looked at her for a long, painful moment, then shook his head. "I needed help grieving, not someone who weaponized that grief." Victoria's face cracked completely, and then Daniel said the words that sealed everything. "It's over, Victoria." Security stepped forward. But before they could take her arm, Victoria whispered something so soft, so chilling, it sliced through the noise. "You think you've uncovered everything, but you haven't." She lifted her chin. "There's still one truth none of you know." And as the room held its breath, Victoria finally prepared to reveal the last secret she'd kept buried. All eyes stayed locked on Victoria as she stood trembling in the center of the ballroom, mascara streaked, breath unsteady. The confidence she once wielded like armor had crumbled, yet her final words lingered in the air like smoke. "There's still one truth none of you know." Daniel swallowed. "What truth?" Victoria stared at Ethan, not with hatred, not with victory, but with something almost empty. "I never wanted to replace your mother," she whispered, "but Daniel wasn't the only one grieving. I lost someone too, someone who meant everything to me." The ballroom held its breath. "My brother," she continued. "He worked for Daniel years ago. A construction accident, faulty equipment. The company settled quietly, but my brother never walked again. And when he passed, I blamed Daniel. I blamed this family." A wave of shock rippled through the room. Ethan felt the weight of her confession, not as justification, but as the twisted root behind everything she had done. Grief had hardened into blame. Blame into obsession, obsession into cruelty. Daniel exhaled shakily. "Victoria, I'm sorry for your loss, but what you did to me, to my son, to our home. Nothing can excuse that. For the first time, Victoria didn't argue. Security gently took her by the arms. She didn't fight. She simply lowered her gaze and allowed herself to be guided away, the ballroom doors closing behind her with a soft, definitive click. And just like that, the storm that had swallowed their lives for months finally broke. Daniel turned to Ethan, eyes wet. "Son, I failed you. I let her twist everything, but I'm here now. I promise you, I won't ever let anyone come between us again." Ethan stepped into his father's embrace, feeling, for the first time in so long, safe, whole, seen. Ava smiled softly, wiping her eyes. "Told you the truth would win." Marianne approached, placing a reassuring hand on Daniel's shoulder. "We'll undo the legal damage, every forged document, every attempted transfer. Your life is still yours." Jackson paused before leaving. "I'll testify, whatever you need." When the ballroom finally emptied, Ethan looked out at the city lights beyond the tall hotel windows, bright, steady, peaceful, a world that finally felt possible again. Daniel placed a hand on his son's back. "Let's go home." Ethan nodded. Home, a real one, a safe one, a new beginning. And as they walked out into the cool night air, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. Well, that's it, my friends. If you're still here with me all the way to this moment, it means something in this story touched your heart in a real way. Maybe it reminded you that silence can be dangerous, or that love without honesty isn't love at all. Or maybe, just maybe, it reminded you of your own strength. You know, the Stoics used to say, "The obstacle is the way. What hurts us can also shape us." Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." And that's exactly what Ethan learned. Even when the world around him twisted, even when manipulation clouded the truth, he held on to the only thing he could control, his courage. This story isn't just drama. It's a reminder that intuition matters, that the people who truly love you will listen, even when the world tries to confuse the truth. And healing begins the moment you stop blaming yourself for the choices of others. If this journey made you feel something, hope, clarity, strength, then don't keep it to yourself. Like the video, share it with someone who might need this message today, and subscribe to stay with us for more stories that speak to the heart. We're here, together, and your story matters too.